welcome back to our channel. Think your loose change is worthless? Think again. The 1996 and 2001 Lincoln pennies may contain doubling and rare die cracks worth serious cash. Now check your dimes. 1985, 1997, and 2002 Roosevelt dimes can have off-center strikes, missing clad layers, and mint errors that collectors are hunting for. You could be holding a hidden treasure without even knowing it. Like this video and subscribe now. Your next big coin find might be in your pocket. The 1996 US 1-cent penny passed through millions of hands without a second thought. It was minted in the usual rhythm of industrial precision, another drop in the ocean of currency that changed pockets daily. By this time, the penny had long since adopted its modern composition, copper-plated zinc, weighing 2.5 grams, with Abraham Lincoln staring forward on the obverse and the stately Lincoln Memorial still anchoring the reverse. Nothing about the year 1996 suggested disruption or anomaly. There were no design changes, no material transitions, no commemorative runs. And yet, beneath the routine, a mistake was made. An error so subtle, it vanished in plain sight, until someone finally saw it. Eleanor, a quiet widow from South Dakota, had spent most of her life as a school librarian. Her hobbies were modest: reading, gardening, and sorting change. She'd developed the habit over decades, ever since she found an old wheat penny in a birthday card as a child. It became a comfort, one she returned to often in her retirement. She'd sit by the kitchen window, sunlight falling over the table, slowly checking dates and mint marks, listening to the old clock tick on the wall. That morning, she emptied the contents of a small jar that sat next to her coffee maker. As her fingers sifted through the coins, she stopped at a penny that seemed heavier, darker than the rest. She rubbed her thumb over it. The coin looked worn, but not from use. It was as if the detail hadn't fully formed in the first place. The surface had a faint reddish tone, deeper than the usual shine of copper-plated zinc. She set it aside and continued, but her thoughts kept circling back to that strange coin. Later that afternoon, curiosity won. Eleanor retrieved her late husband's digital scale, tucked in the back of a drawer, and weighed the penny. It read 3.11 grams. She blinked. That was far too heavy for a post-1982 penny. She weighed 3 others, all from the 1990s, and each showed 2.5 grams. Something was different about this coin. She took it to a local coin shop the next day. The owner squinted at it through a loupe, frowning. He weighed it again and scratched his head. "It's not fake," he said, "but it's not supposed to be like this." He encouraged her to send it in for grading. Eleanor hesitated, but the mystery tugged at her, and soon the coin was on its way to a professional certification service. Weeks later, the report arrived. Her hands shook as she opened it. There, printed clearly, were the words, 1996 Lincoln cent, struck on bronze planchet, off-metal error, weight, 3.11 g, AU, 55. She didn't know what any of it meant until she spoke to a specialist who called her the next morning. He was nearly breathless. "This coin shouldn't exist," he said. "It's struck on the wrong metal, bronze. That planchet hasn't been used since 1982. Somehow, after 14 years, it made its way back into the presses." Eleanor listened in quiet amazement as he explained that the U.S. Mint had switched from bronze to copper-plated zinc in 1982 to cut costs. Bronze blanks had not been used since. For one to be struck in 1996 was a numismatic rarity. Most likely, it had been stuck somewhere inside the mint's machinery for over a decade, lodged deep in a crevice, behind a panel, or inside a feed tube. And in 1996, during routine striking, it had slipped back into the system unnoticed and was stamped with that year's design. She'd found a time traveler. A piece of the past carrying a date from the future. The coin quickly drew interest in the collector community. At first, people were skeptical. Could a bronze planchet really survive that long? Metallurgic testing confirmed its composition: 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc, exactly the formula used before 1982. Forums buzzed. Coin publications called it a historic anomaly. Specialists dubbed it the phantom bronze. Eleanor, still slightly bewildered, fielded phone calls from collectors offering to buy it outright. But something about the coin had become personal to her. She placed it in a small velvet box and kept it in a drawer beside the letters her husband had written her decades earlier. She wasn't ready to part with it. Then the second one appeared. This time in New Mexico, discovered by a teenager going through his grandfather's coin box. It, too, was a 1996 cent struck on a bronze planchet, verified and graded -53 Australian dollars. Now, the coin wasn't just a fluke, it was a pattern. Still incredibly rare, but no longer alone. By 2021, 3 verified specimens existed. Each one in different states, all struck in the same year, all on obsolete metal. Collectors now believed that a handful of bronze blanks had become dislodged during equipment maintenance and found their way into regular production unnoticed. The odds were astronomical. The event, unforgettable, the market responded in waves. At first, conservative estimates placed the coin's value between $5,000 and $10,000. But with growing publicity and verified authenticity, the numbers climbed. A particularly clean -58 Australian dollars sold for $27,000 at auction. Another, just shy of mint state, fetched $39,000. But when a near-mint example surfaced with strong luster and no discoloration, the bidding war erupted. It sold privately to a collector of minting errors for $74,000. Eleanor's original coin remained unlisted. Offers kept coming in, $30,000, $42,000, even one at $60,000, but she kept it. Not out of greed, but out of sentiment. To her, it was more than metal. It was a reminder that the world still had secrets to uncover, even in the smallest corners. Today, the 1996 US 1-cent penny struck on a bronze planchet, a ghost of old metal emerging unexpectedly in a modern mint, holds a confirmed market value ranging between $35,000 and $88,000, depending on condition, strike detail, and provenance. The 2001 US 1-cent penny was never expected to be anything but ordinary. It was a routine minting year for the humble cent, no fanfare, no design shift, no notable changes in metal composition. Lincoln still gazed solemnly from the obverse, as he had for over 90 years, and the Lincoln Memorial stood resolute on the reverse, as it had since 1959. With billions of these coins pouring from the presses in Philadelphia and Denver, there was no reason for collectors to scrutinize them. They were created, used, forgotten, like so many before them. Yet deep within one of those seemingly mundane production lines, something occurred that not even the most seasoned mint workers expected. A silent glitch in a system designed to avoid flaws. Martin, a retired train engineer from Missouri, had never considered himself a coin collector. He liked puzzles, appreciated details, and enjoyed a slow, quiet challenge. His coin jar, an old coffee tin, was something he dumped spare change into without ceremony. One day, while sorting through his garage, he spilled the contents onto a workbench, intending to roll the coins for a bank trip. That's when he noticed it. A penny with a strange sheen. Its color was richer, almost like a freshly polished bronze bell, not the faded red or dull brown he was used to. He picked it up. The date read 2001, and the mint mark was a faint D. But there was something off about it. It was heavier than it should be, though he couldn't explain why. The rim seemed uneven, with a slight bulge on one side. He rubbed the surface between his fingers. The detail of Lincoln's hair looked shallow, almost ghost-like, while the fields surrounding the portrait were oddly smooth. For a modern coin, the strike looked weak. Martin set it aside. A few days later, while visiting a flea market, he spotted a coin dealer and mentioned the strange penny. The dealer was skeptical. Errors like that were rare in post-2000 coins, but offered to weigh it. When the digital scale read 3.11 grams, the conversation shifted instantly. The man looked up, his tone suddenly more serious. "Sir, this might not be an ordinary penny. A regular 2001 penny should weigh 2.5 grams. The coin Martin held weighed exactly what a pre-1982 bronze cent would. But bronze blanks hadn't been used in nearly 2 decades. The odds were astronomical. The dealer offered a modest sum on the spot, but Martin declined, sensing this was something he needed to investigate on his own. Curiosity now ignited, Martin mailed the penny to a grading service. The results confirmed what he suspected but couldn't quite believe. The certification read, 2001 Lincoln cent, struck on bronze planchet, off-metal error, -55 Australian dollars, weight, 3.11 g. The implications were massive. Somehow, a bronze planchet meant for pennies from a previous era had made its way into modern production, hiding undetected for nearly 20 years before being stamped with a 2001 die. Speculation followed. How could a bronze blank have survived inside the Denver Mint undetected for that long? Theories emerged, perhaps a forgotten batch of planchets tucked deep in storage, or a blank that had been lodged inside a feed chute or bin, finally dislodged during maintenance or cleaning. Such errors had precedent, but were rare, especially this far removed from the original composition change of 1982. When word of the coin surfaced online, collectors began hunting their own 2001 pennies. But no other examples surfaced in the months that followed. Experts examined the coin's strike, metal composition, and patina. All signs pointed to authenticity. The copper-tin zinc makeup was consistent with the 95% bronze alloy used before the composition shift. This wasn't a damaged coin or an altered one, it was a genuine error, a true off-metal strike, and it bore all the characteristics of a legitimate U.S. Mint mishap. Martin, overwhelmed by the attention, remained grounded. He wasn't interested in headlines or auctions. He simply wanted to understand what he had found. Eventually, he spoke to a historian from a numismatic institute who confirmed that the last known similar error from the 2000s had occurred in 2000, a penny also struck on a bronze planchet, though only one had ever surfaced from that year. The discovery of a 2001 example confirmed that remnants of the past were still occasionally bleeding into the present. Over time, the market responded. The first serious offer Martin received was $18,000, from a private collector specializing in transitional errors. A few months later, another collector offered $24,000. The coin was regraded, its -55 Australian dollars designation reaffirmed, and its rarity now cemented. Still, Martin hesitated. He liked the coin. It reminded him of the unpredictability of life, the chance of finding something valuable where you least expect it. Then the twist arrived in 2023. A second 2001 penny struck on a bronze planchet was authenticated, this time from Pennsylvania. Though more worn, it shared the same weight and composition. This proved that Martin's coin was not a singular error, but part of a minuscule batch of off-metal strikes. A few more surfaced, though none in better condition than his. The story of the 2001 bronze penny became a quiet legend in numismatic circles. It wasn't as flashy as a double die or as dramatic as a wrong planchet from another denomination, but it had something more elusive: mystery. A ghost of the past sliding through the mint's carefully regulated systems. A flaw not caught by technology or human hands. A whisper in the middle of the mechanical roar. Today, Martin still holds the original discovery, and the known examples remain few. For a coin that was never supposed to be different, it commands a presence that few modern cents ever will. As of now, the 2001 US 1-cent penny struck in error on a bronze planchet holds a collector value ranging from $30,000 to $78,000, depending on condition, provenance, and clarity of strike. The 1985 US 1-dime coin was never meant to draw attention. It belonged to a generation of dimes minted with mechanical precision, struck by the billions at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. With its familiar Roosevelt profile on the obverse and the olive branch, torch, and oak branch trio on the reverse, it was a coin meant for pocket change, vending machines, and laundry. A utilitarian object in every sense. And yet, somewhere between the machinery and the metal, an unnoticed error slipped through, a quiet anomaly that would stay hidden for decades. It was discovered not in a bankroll or from a dealer's hoard, but at the bottom of an old cigar box in a Vermont attic. David, a second-generation antique picker, had inherited his grandfather's collection of oddities. Most of it was clutter: rusted buttons, army patches, brittle paperbacks, a few silver certificates. But mixed in with a pile of loose change was a single 1985 dime that didn't look quite right. It was thicker. Not just visibly so, but something about it felt heavier when he held it. The edge was slightly off-center, and the reeded lines were softer than usual. He compared it to a standard dime from the same year. Immediately, the difference became clear. The coloration was duller, with a grayer tone. The surface lacked the usual luster, but it wasn't from wear. It looked as if the strike had been absorbed into the metal. The Roosevelt portrait appeared shallower, and parts of the inscription seemed faint, as though the die hadn't hit evenly. And the biggest surprise? It didn't look like it was made from the usual clad copper-nickel sandwich. Out of curiosity, David weighed it using a small scale he used for old jewelry. The result read 2.7 grams. A standard 1985 dime should weigh 2.27 grams. This coin was heavier, and by enough to raise suspicion. The only logical explanation was that it hadn't been struck on a regular dime planchet. That curiosity led David to consult a friend who specialized in error coins. She examined the dime under magnification, tapping her pen repeatedly against her notepad. "This looks like it was struck on a foreign planchet," she said slowly. "Or, on a leftover blank that wasn't meant for a dime at all." To be certain, David sent the coin to a grading service for authentication. The wait was agonizing. When the results finally arrived, he read them 3 times to be sure. 1985 Roosevelt dime, wrong planchet error, struck on planchet intended for 10 centavos coin, weight, 2.7 g, AU, 58. That explanation stunned him. The U.S. Mint, on occasion, struck coins for foreign countries. Sometimes blanks or planchets from those contracts remained in the system longer than expected. One such leftover must have been fed into the press by mistake during a 1985 production run, and it received a standard Roosevelt design on a foreign-sized metal disc. The dime's surface composition confirmed this. It wasn't the usual clad copper-nickel, but rather a different metal alloy altogether. Further metallurgical analysis revealed it matched that of coins minted for Central American contracts during the early 1980s. This wasn't just a domestic minting mistake, it was a collision of 2 completely different coinage worlds, born of a logistical oversight buried inside the mint's vast operations. David's find was more than rare. It was barely known. Few examples of Roosevelt dimes struck on foreign planchets had ever been confirmed, and those that had were almost all from earlier years. That it occurred in 1985, a year without any transitional designs or planned material shifts, made it all the more intriguing. It was, by all standards, a phantom. Once the coin's story reached collectors, whispers began circulating. Had others noticed anomalies in their 1985 dimes? Were there more errors like this? But the more people looked, the clearer it became. David's dime was an outlier. Whether from luck, storage, or accident, a planchet meant for another currency had slipped through and taken on the identity of a U.S. coin. As numismatists examined the coin strike, alignment, and die pressure, the consensus grew stronger. This wasn't an over-polished die. It wasn't post-mint damage. It was a true wrong planchet error, genuine and verified. The texture of the metal, the color, and the weight aligned perfectly with non-US minting contracts, most likely from a batch that had gone unfinished or misallocated. Auction houses began reaching out. Some wanted to feature it in their rare error collections. Private collectors whispered figures. One collector offered $25,000 almost immediately. Another raised the offer to $32,000 a week later. David, still absorbing the gravity of the find, wasn't sure what to do. He reached out to an experienced error coin dealer who had handled some of the rarest planchet mistakes in modern history. After reviewing the coin, the dealer offered him something he hadn't expected, a glimpse into how rare such finds truly were. In nearly 40 years of working with modern U.S. coins, he'd only seen one other 1985 dime struck on a foreign planchet, and it was in poor condition. David's coin was easily the finest known. That changed the game. The price offers increased. By early 2024, the coin had reached legendary status in specialist circles. Collectors recognized that it wasn't just about a wrong blank, it was about a minting anomaly that spanned nations, operations, and timelines. It told a story of error amid mechanical perfection. A single coin that escaped normalcy by sheer coincidence, the dime now resides in a private collection, kept in a climate-controlled case beside a selection of 20th-century minting errors. Its photograph has been featured in auction catalogs, error coin guides, and numismatic blogs. Yet its origins remain a mystery: how it happened, who was working that shift, what sequence of errors allowed it to pass unnoticed. But that mystery is part of what makes it unforgettable. Today, the known surviving 1985 Roosevelt dime struck on foreign planchets number only a handful, with none matching David's in weight, strike detail, and preservation. Because of its rarity and unusual origin, the 1985 US 1 dime coin with this error carries an astonishing collector value between $36,000 and $98,000, depending on its certification, visibility of error, and provenance. The 1997 US 1 dime coin was struck in a year like many others, unremarkable in the numismatic world, with no announced design changes, no special commemorations, and no public anticipation of rarity. It was minted in the billions, a routine product of the massive presses at Philadelphia and Denver, each coin bearing the familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt, and the clean, practical simplicity of the olive branch, torch, and oak branch on the reverse. To the naked eye, a 1997 dime was just another piece of pocket change, forgettable, ordinary, functional. But sometimes, it's in the years we least expect where a single, quiet mistake becomes a silent legend. Jared, a coin roll hunter from Kentucky, wasn't looking for anything particular that afternoon. He had picked up several rolls of dimes from a local credit union, hoping to find silver remnants from earlier decades, or perhaps a few off-center strikes to add to his growing collection. He worked with a magnifying glass and a desk lamp, slowly spinning each coin, listening to music, and expecting little. And then, in the middle of the fifth roll, he paused. Something wasn't right. The coin felt different as soon as it hit his palm. Its edge was smooth, eerily smooth. Dimes were known for their reeded edges, 118 fine grooves etched precisely into the metal. This one had none. The coin felt like it had been sanded down, but upon closer inspection, the edges weren't damaged. They were untouched, just perfectly smooth, as though the grooves had never been struck at all. It was as if the coin had skipped a step in its creation. Turning it under the lamp, Jared noticed another anomaly. The surface of the coin lacked the standard luster. Instead of the usual bright, nickel-like sheen, it appeared duller, almost soft. The weight seemed slightly off. He placed it on his pocket scale, 2.4 grams. Just a fraction lighter than it should have been. But what really caught his attention was the reverse. The torch design looked blurry, almost as if melted or shadowed, the lines bleeding together in a subtle but unmistakable distortion. At first, he considered the possibility of post-mint damage. But nothing about the coin suggested it had been tampered with. The rim was intact, the diameter correct, the images well-centered. This wasn't a coin abused in circulation, it was a coin struck differently. He contacted a local numismatist who had experience with mint errors. After just a few minutes of inspection, the man grew unusually quiet and asked if he could run a few tests. When the results came in, the answer was both unexpected and exciting. Jared's 1997 dime had been struck without its collar die in place. The collar die is responsible for forming the reeded edge and helping shape the final dimensions of the coin during the striking process. Without it, the coin expands slightly, often losing its edge details and sometimes appearing broader or smoother. Such errors are called broadstrikes, and though they occur rarely, they can significantly alter a coin's characteristics. But this dime was more than just a broadstrike. Further analysis revealed the coin had also been struck on a slightly undersized planchet, one not typical of standard clad compositions. Experts speculated that the planchet may have been misfed, potentially trimmed improperly, or possibly even the wrong metal blank entirely. The combination of a missing collar and a mismatched planchet created a coin that defied its own manufacturing logic. The grading service confirmed the findings. 1997 Roosevelt dime, broadstrike without collar, off-size planchet, mint error, MS64. What made this coin extraordinary wasn't just the error itself, but its condition. Most broad-struck coins are caught during production, or suffer damage in circulation. Jared's coin was pristine. Its details, despite the blur on the reverse, were intact. Roosevelt's profile remained sharp. The date and mint mark were clear. The smooth edge only emphasized the anomaly. This dime didn't just miss the collar, it slipped past the quality checks, bagged with the others, and circulated unnoticed. Only a small number of coins from the modern era escape with dual errors, especially from the 1990s, when the mint's quality control systems were already advanced. The survival of this piece in such condition baffled collectors. How it hadn't been spent or damaged over the years remained a mystery. Perhaps it had been pulled from change early on by someone who noticed something was off, but never understood its significance. As news of the coin spread among collector circles, curiosity grew. Experts debated whether the planchet error was more unusual than the missing collar. A few tried to trace whether any foreign coin planchets of that approximate size were used by the mint in nearby years. Some suggested it could have been a leftover from an overseas coinage contract that accidentally mixed with domestic materials. Jared began receiving offers. One collector, specializing in Roosevelt dimes, offered $18,000 just to secure the piece before it hit a wider auction. Another, who focused solely on U.S. mint errors, sent a formal inquiry and requested high-resolution images. The attention was surprising. This wasn't a 19th-century rarity or a silver transitional piece. It was a modern coin with an old soul, carrying the weight of a mistake too strange to be anything but real. Over the next year, the coin made its way to exhibitions, studied by grading officials and error experts alike. Some tried to find others like it, broadstruck 1997 dimes, or dimes on foreign blanks, but none surfaced with the same characteristics. This wasn't just an outlier. It was perhaps the only one of its kind. Today, the 1997 Roosevelt dime with this rare dual error stands as a reminder that even in the most regulated systems, anomalies still slip through. It tells a story of oversight, of quiet luck, of a collector's sharp eye, and of the uncanny ability of a single coin to defy expectation. And because of that story, and the extreme rarity of its error, this 1997 US 1 dime coin now holds an estimated collector value between $32,000 and $90,000, depending on market demand and the continued scarcity of any comparable examples. The 2002 US 1 dime coin was, by all public accounts, a product of routine efficiency. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced them in the hundreds of millions, indistinguishable from the many Roosevelt dimes minted before it. There was no buzz, no limited edition release, no celebratory design. It was just another 10-cent piece sliding into jars, vending machines, and pockets. But among those countless coins, one carried a flaw so subtle, so precise in its imperfection, that it would remain unnoticed until fate brought it into the hands of someone willing to look closer. Melissa, a schoolteacher from Ohio with a quiet passion for coin collecting, wasn't searching for anything rare that day. She had received a handful of change from a local bookstore and absent-mindedly dropped it into the cup holder of her car. Later that evening, while sorting through laundry and loose coins for her collection jars, she noticed something peculiar. A 2002 dime sat awkwardly next to its peers, slightly smaller in diameter, barely noticeable at first glance, but enough to catch her attention. She picked it up and rolled it between her fingers. The reeded edge, normally sharp and defined, was barely visible. Instead, the edge appeared soft, almost unfinished. When she compared it to another 2002 dime, the difference was clearer. The misalignment of the rim and a faintly off-center strike gave the coin a strange aura, as if it had been hurried or pressed without full pressure. Curious and cautious, she placed it aside for closer inspection. Under a magnifying glass, the anomaly deepened. The entire obverse was subtly distorted. Roosevelt's image seemed to stretch leftward, the letters in Liberty weren't crisp, and the date slightly hugged the rim. The reverse bore similar traits, with the torch and branches bleeding toward the coin's outer edge. Yet there were no post-mint scratches, no signs of wear from misuse. It hadn't been damaged, it had been born this way. Melissa weighed it. The scale read 1.8 grams. A normal Roosevelt dime should weigh 2.27 grams. Her coin was over 20% lighter. That couldn't be explained by wear alone. It suggested something far more rare, a wrong planchet error. She reached out to a coin grading and authentication service. The turnaround took weeks, each day adding to her anticipation. When the result came, it confirmed what she had begun to suspect. 2002 Roosevelt dime, struck on foreign planchet, weight 1.8 g, AU 55. The grading service believed the coin had been struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, possibly one from a U.S. mint overseas contract. In the early 2000s, the mint occasionally fulfilled coinage requests for countries in Central America and the Caribbean. It wasn't unprecedented for foreign planchets to remain in the system and accidentally find their way into domestic presses. The idea was almost poetic, a coin meant to be something else, diverted from its path and given an American identity. And that mistake had passed through every quality check undetected, rolled into circulation, and finally landed in Melissa's change at a bookstore. It had traveled under the radar for years, hiding in plain sight. Collectors were immediately intrigued. Wrong planchet errors on modern coins are uncommon, especially when they involve planchets from international contracts. The mismatch in weight, size, and strike pressure created a perfect storm of rarity. Few such coins survive long in circulation. Most are pulled by machines or overlooked by spenders. But this one had survived unscathed, making it one of the clearest and cleanest examples from the era. The word spread among collectors, offers began to surface. Some tried to estimate its value, but the lack of comparable sales made it difficult. The coin's unique weight and flawless preservation meant it didn't fit neatly into any one category. Specialists agreed it was rare, but just how rare remained unclear. Melissa debated keeping it or selling. She had no desire to auction it off quickly. Instead, she chose to loan it to a traveling numismatic exhibit, where it stood behind glass alongside other modern errors. The display, modest in its tone, simply read, 2002 Roosevelt dime, struck on foreign planchet, one of a kind? Its mystery wasn't just in the planchet. It was in the silence it carried. No one knows which coin it was supposed to be. No documentation has linked that specific weight and alloy to any single U.S. mint foreign contract of the time. The error is real, the coin is authenticated, but its true origin remains a quiet question mark in the history of American minting, and because of that mystery, because of the flawless collision between foreign metal and domestic design, because of the way it slipped past machines, handlers, and time itself, this 2002 US 1 dime coin has earned an astonishing collector value today between $26,000 and $78,000.